Prostitution and its validity as an occupation is something that's been widely debated for hundreds of years. Its existence goes back to ancient times, and in a time where the rights of people to their own bodies is more highly debated than ever, I believe it is important to recognize that an individual's decision of whether or not they want to use their own body to make themselves a living is highly important. Today, I'm going to discuss the history of prostitution, prostitution as a valid occupation, and what you can do to change the laws surrounding people's rights to their own bodies. From now on, I will also be referring to prostitution as sex work. Sex work in America dates back to the early 19th century. According to Oxford University's encyclopedia, soldiers who couldn't afford the luxury of marriage made up a reliable clientele base for women who were willing to provide them with the pleasure that they craved. These women were able to capitalize off of this need, and sex work provided them with some economic independence in a time where women weren't really allowed to have jobs at all. However, the risks of STDs, violence against them, and pregnancy were still present. These are risks that we are not unheard of in sex work today. By the middle of the century, red light districts like the ones you see in Amsterdam were popular across America and became normalized within society. However, during World War I, concern arose that women were being forced into sex work, and that's where we see the phenomenon of white slavery. This led to the push to close brothels by progressive reformers. However, this only pushed sex work underground, which is where you see the emergence of pimps and sex trafficking rings. After World War II, the introduction of antibiotics, as well as a new emphasis on family values, made sex workers seem more deviant from the norms of society than ever before. However, men who purchased their services were seen as in control of their sexuality, which creates an obvious discrepancy between the two. Similar to the argument of legalizing marijuana, sex work will only become safe if there are regulations placed on it. The reason that it's seen as dangerous is because there are no laws protecting sex workers against crimes committed against them. Human Rights Watch conducted research across the world which consistently showed that countries in which sex work is illegal have a direct correlation to the level of violence inflicted on sex workers. By decriminalizing sex work, sex workers would be able to organize, advocate for themselves, and be seen as an equal occupation to any job. This is where normalization starts, by accepting those seen as deviant as part of society. By decriminalizing sex work, those who are being held in sex trafficking rings may be more likely to seek help as well. NPR documented the case of Cecilia Gentili, a trans undocumented sex worker who moved from Argentina to New York after being harassed by police in her town. When the drug house she was being held at in Brooklyn was busted by the police, she was scared to ask for help due to the illegality of sex work and her immigrant status. She said that had she not feared the legal consequences of sex work, she may have been more inclined to seek help much sooner. So what can we do to help? I'm not going to stand here and tell you to go and solicit sex work from someone because that's not what this is about. Over the summer, a bill was introduced in New York that would decriminalize sex work. This bill allows for paid sex between consenting adults, which is essentially what sex work is. In an interview with the New York Times, Gentili stated, "We are trying to change the lives of many New Yorkers who have historically been criminalized for using their bodies to survive. Education is the key. If you come across someone who has the wrong idea about sex workers, educate them. Tell them what sex work is really about. Tell them what it means for sex work to be decriminalized. Start a discussion with them because education is the way that ideas are spread. And change only comes when enough people demand it." So today we discussed the history of sex work, what decriminalization of sex work would mean for sex workers, and legislation that was introduced to change the laws surrounding sex work. I hope that today I've changed some views on sex work and I've convinced people to join the movement to support the decriminalization of using one's body to make a living. Thank you.